It's such a warm welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. Well, good morning, everyone. How are you?
Good.
I was here 3 weeks ago, which was -5. I've been staying up this is the 10th time I said it this morning, and it was cold. This is something I saw in the morning. And frankly, I mean, there's been such a rush of energy that I felt this morning. I really, for this topic and what I want to share with you today, I want to be here for half a day, a whole day, because an hour is very short to try to share what I can. So I deliberately talk about some of the topic that might bring some of the messages, the key messages, to the front in a very disruptive way. The content might not necessarily connect directly with some of the questions that you have in mind, but if you can't make the connection after listening to me, feel free to ask the questions. And I love challenging and kind of naughty questions as well. Sorry, this is not. So this is an Instagram friend of mine, and I saw it this morning. And this is what she does. She just might kind of FX pictures of millions. And it feels good. So this is all fact, right? This is FX stuff. It feels good to be lost in the right direction. And I saw that, 5 o'clock in the morning. It's such a great way to represent disruption and what it's all about. So I've been dancing from topic to topic a little bit, but eventually I hope you're going to see the connection. Today I'll be talking with you about a few things. It's not so much about general innovation, but more about disruptive innovation. Now I do realize that disruptive innovation as a category is still quite generally poorly understood. So I do apologize if you do have to make a mental leap. Now I would also be sharing the journey that Australia Post has been going through over the last particular 18 months to try to tackle disruption. So not many of these activities are publicly known because they are often related to how we change the culture and change the way that we work. But some of these activities and changes are starting to make such a huge impact on how we do business today. Now, the other thing that I want to show you here is this. Sorry. So, again, something that I saw this morning. So, the Essential Public Service published this on LinkedIn this morning. So, 66% of public service leaders think that a personalized citizen experience is a top 3 priority. Now, I'm sure this strikes a chord with most of you here. But when you think about the notion of what is called a personalized citizen, it is such a massive undertaking because government need to understand the citizen as a person, not as a number. And that requires identity on all levels, digital identity, a record of how government has been transacting with the citizens. It relates to how we manage privacy. It requires different departments to work with one another quite effectively. And it requires an Uber customer experience. So all of these, by themselves, they are massive undertakings. So when we talk about disruptive innovation, for me that represents a challenge for the public sector. That is disruptive for the public sector. So for the last 22 years, I've been an entrepreneur. So I started out my career working for a Japanese company as a marketer. Very quickly realized that the future of the world was in technology. So I switched to technology. So that means that over the last 20 years, I've been a technologist, an entrepreneur, working, building my own companies, but also working with large corporates to get them to innovate. So people usually think of me as a disruptor because personally I have a disruptive character. I'm very annoying to be around. I keep questioning why you keep doing things this way. And then, frankly, in corporates, the most common answer that you get back is, well, kind of, my boss told me to do that. or that's always how it's been done before. And that doesn't sit well with me, because for me it's all about building awesome businesses that people kind of enjoy hooking in, and then delivering great outcomes, great products to the market. That's what I'm all about. So I bring those perspectives and the personality to help companies change that. At the same time, as per Marian's introduction, I've always been building up companies that aim to disrupt certain markets, but also companies that are prepared to disrupt themselves at the same time. And this is a very challenging notion in itself. Because if you think about the notion of disrupting oneself, it's similar to when you run a race. Now, anyone who's familiar of running a race, whether it's a marathon, a human race, or a horse race, or a cycling race, or a motorbike race, it's very difficult to be in front, to be the pace setter. And someone who dominates the market is very much similar to the pace setter. It takes a lot more to win, eventually. So, my background is a doer. It fits with my surname. My surname is Do. Yeah, so my friend called me, well, Mr. Do or Mr. Don't. There's no trying. Either you do or you don't. And I love it, because that is the spirit I want to share with you today. But I'm also a dreamer. And being a dreamer, I love William Blake. This is what he said years ago. So what is now proved was only once imagined. But not everything that was once imagined is now proved. Anyone who's familiar or a fan of Arthur Radibo, and hope I pronounce his name correctly, he was a futurist cartoonist, very popular in the States. In the mid-50s, early 60s, he projected the future through his cartoon drawings, and he talked about how he saw the postal services in the US eventually operating. So this is a drawing about a jetpack mailman. So he saw a future that eventually the posties, as they are known in Australia, will be flying around using jetpacks, delivering mail, because they are more efficient, and because those technology would eventually get mature. Well, we actually never quite got there. And jetpacks are now commercially available, I think, around $200,000, New Zealand company, awesome. So if you have the money, if you want to, you actually could go out and buy one of them right now. But economically, it doesn't make any sense to do this. But at the same time, if you look at something similar, I love walking around and I might be blocking your view a bit. The Chicago Tribune, only 2 years later, hypothesized about how postcards would, in the future, be delivered. And it was awesome. They talked about a concept called a lunar mailbag. And I hope that when we started building the digital mailbox, we actually thought of this possibility. So they thought about the fact that, well, one day, postcards, they wouldn't be sent physically anymore. The information would be coded and wired over satellite signals, and then got to the receiving end, and somebody over there would be rewriting or decoding the content into physical form. Now, to some extent, this is getting realized through a combination of digitization and 3D printing. So it's getting close to that. So some of the predictions in the past are starting to come true. You might have seen slides that are similar to this a number of times. And this is just talking about the fact that today it is an explosion of technology change. That in itself, in the 21st century, doing business or running a family or living your personal life or walking through your career is nothing like the 20th century anymore because of these explosive changes. And that creates a problem when it comes to innovation, because innovation in itself is only a function of change. Does anyone here disagree with that definition? Do you think that innovation is something not related to change? It's quiet, so silence is implicit agreement. Now, like Google helped me find this statement. Well, this is a sort of the statement that is true to my heart. Now, somebody actually credited this statement to Peter Drucker, but given that Lincoln was a lot older than Peter, and Lincoln probably has no chance now to dispute any opinions I'll credit him with saying. Now, the best way to predict your future is to create it. Now, there's a subtle connection back here to change and innovation. I brought this pizza box because this box represents so much innovation through the years. I did try to look at the patents registry online. The company that cracked the code in designing the best pizza box, I believe, is Domino's Pizza. I don't believe they patented many ideas, but there are dozens of innovations that have gone into the pizza box today that made it what it is. So the world of innovation has always been with us. To say that innovation is suddenly something new and shiny is actually a flaw. So can you see there's a bit of a paradox here? So what sort of innovation here are we talking about? I saw this in 2013. So President Barack Obama had created this initiative, and he called it the Presidential Innovation Fellows Program. Some of you might have seen this because you are in government. And in talking to my colleagues in America, he studied this because fundamentally the answer to the question I just posed right there is that none of us know. None of us know where all these changes are going to take us. And the only answer, the only response there is to have the will and to have the resources to get the best minds in the business, in society, in government together and embrace the changes in a proactive way. So this program has been progressing quite well. It's very much a mechanism for the US government to get a lot closer to entrepreneurs, to share the change agenda for America. You recognize the minister's name here, Mr. Duc. And I love the way that he put this, because it's just so honest. And the way that I read this, and I hope I read this correctly, is that if any government in the world today come out and say, I'm the best out there when it comes to innovation, that probably would raise a few eyebrows. But at the same time, government has an undeniable role to play in supporting innovation. And later in his speech, Minister Turnbull went further by saying that if we are serious at all as a nation about innovation, well, government has got to change. Government's got to be more innovative. And as an entrepreneur, I love this. Because that means that there's now a real willingness in Australia, at least from government perspective, to nurture and build an innovation economy. If anyone here has read Startup Nation, talking about how Israel has basically transformed on the journey of entrepreneurship, it's just amazing. Similar things are happening in Singapore, in Hong Kong, to some less extent like in Vietnam, where if you listen to horror stories of firms now in the valley that are struggling to find talent, Stanford graduates are turning down $170,000 job offer, plus 100K sign-up bonus to do their own startups. Graduates now in the valley, some of them are getting offered more money than engineers who've got 10 years experience. It's just that really imbalance in the market. But it's just the way the reflection of how the market reorganizes itself. These are all consequences of disruption. In Israel, I was listening to David Sharman, the Australian ambassador to Israel, talking about the scene over there. And it's just amazing. He just said, well, if you go and talk to Israeli graduates and say, well, which company do you dream of working for? They said, no, what are you talking about? I want to work for myself. Entrepreneurship. And Australia, if you look at the history of our engineering ingenuity, with our real desire to innovate, and partly because of the geography that we have, the challenges that we need to face as a nation, it's really good, kind of really ground for such a spirit. So at Australia Post, 200 years history, different entities sort of all joined up together to being the corporation that we see today. The innovation journey has always been there. Right? But if you look at the pace of change, it's kind of slow. Because digitization wasn't there. the changes were not explosive. We could almost predict the change. And then we put some changes on the market through our products. For example, the introduction of fax machines, right? The introduction of barcodes. And then later on, the introduction of mobile phones. We still had a bit of time there to kind of second guess where the market was going, do something, put something on the market. And the business would still be viable with such a speed. But then digital disruption hit all of us. And then suddenly there was pressure. Competition from the parcel business, obviously, because it's not a monopoly. Letters, you might have heard enough about the challenges in that space. So over the last 4 years, the company had to change and had to ask ourselves these questions. Are we putting enough products that customers love on the market at the pace the market is demanding? And then you have seen a number of different things that have been happening over the last 4 years. The digital mailbox initiative, some of our retail stores are really transforming the format and the offers within the store. The Starshot acquisition, which obviously was a major one, Look and Go travel cart, parcel lockers, absolutely an amazing kind of product success story for Australia. A whole range of identity trusted services, 24/7 self-service through our digital channels, and obviously the $2 billion investment in our parcel network to double our capacity. So some of these investments have been going on. Some results are on the board. The question here is that enough to prevent Australia Post from being disrupted? I'm sure all of you guys would like to know the answer. And the answer is no. Even that is not enough. Because if you look at Kodak, they knew about digital. They actually were one of the first people who experimented with digital. But then for some, whatever reason, we still don't have a Kodak around anymore. It's a wonderful company. We don't have it anymore. And any company the size of Australia Post, anywhere in the world, if they are not deliberate in taking certain action to prevent disruption from affecting their business, they're going to become Kodak. Can you guys still hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So back to the pizza box. So this is a picture I got from one of the patent sites. So the number represents a little incremental innovation. So through the world of innovation, in traditional terms, it's called continuous innovation. And most people here, I assume, would have heard of that phrase. So when you talk about Lean Six Sigma, tweaking your processes to get that 2% performance gain, that is continuous innovation. Now, all businesses should be continuing to do it. Even in the world of disruption, after you put an amazing product on the market, you still have to keep tweaking. There's nothing wrong with that model, keep going. But that's business as usual, that is to be expected, it's nothing cool anymore. Just got to do it. Even when you talk about customer-centric innovation, right, ranging from if you do digital, well, if you build a website, you've got to do some A/B testing. You've got to do some UX testing, you've got to do acceptance testing. Get the customers in, ask them whether they like or not, what choices they prefer. These are the basic essentials of doing business digitally today. If you're going to redesign your retail store, well, you better involve the customers in that process. Just don't go and sort of dream up possibilities without involving customers. Even that realm of innovation should now be considered continuous innovation because the customer should be in the middle of everything that we do. But the pizza box has gone further and to a place where even the customers could not tell us what is it that they want. Now, to bring this to life, if companies insist that the customer can tell them everything that they can build and put on the market, you would never have an iPhone. Is that correct? The customer never asks for an iPhone. The customer, in a way, can ask for something that looked like an iPad, but they never ask for an iPad. And if you have heard of Volvo's attempt to really simplify grocery shopping and delivery to a point where You can buy your grocery and have a choice of the groceries being dropped into the boot of your car in the parking lot. I mean, that sort of concept, no customer came up with such a concept. So this type of innovation falls into the disruptive innovation category. Like, that challenges companies to go beyond what the customer, what the markets are telling them. So what happened with this pizza box is this. So Hell Pizza, anyone came from New Zealand here? Well, that's a surprise. I've not been everywhere to talk about this. So Hell Pizza is a real pizza chain in New Zealand. And I believe that they target the Gen Y teenage demographics. And through a partner of ours, I knew about this wonderful story. So this is this question. We say, look, a plain old pizza box like this, what can we do with this to make it more interesting? Because it's not about buying a pizza, right? But it's more about the total experience. What's going to happen that evening when a couple of teenagers ring up the chain and say, I want 2 boxes of pizza? And are they going to sit there, drink something, watch the TV, or are they going to do something else? So with the Gen Y and with the teenage market, obviously, gaming is a big thing. So there's a natural connection right there. So they started to experiment with this concept, which is don't waste the space that you have in the box, but use that imagery on the box then to initiate an experience. I'm going to give you a demo in no time. This is violent. Is that okay by the department protocol with some shooting on gaming? I might get into trouble here. Now, I actually don't think it's going to work with the monitor, so I've got to disconnect, but you should be able to see something here. Okay. Sorry, this is a bit awkward, because it's just the way the cables are lined up. So I'm going to pick the city that I live in. With gaming, usually there's an emotional connection. If you live in Auckland and zombies land in Christchurch, if they land in Auckland, yeah, you really care. So what you do there is, you can tell. So the imagery here is this, but as soon as you move the app over, you see a different imagery, right? I'm just going to put this down so it becomes a 3D landscape. If I tap ready to play, it renders a scene. And that's very much the city of Auckland in gaming terms. And lo and behold, zombies start invading my city. And then I've got to kill them for points. And then I get to post my score on Facebook, on Twitter with my friends, who then sort of asked me, well, it's pretty cool, I better buy pizza from these guys as well, because then we can connect up, and then we can redeem the point or something similar to JP High. It's wonderful. Wonderful, right? And this is actually very cost effective. It's a great way to engage. But if you pause right there and think for a minute, nobody did any customer service. Nobody came and asked, if I view something like this, would you come and buy more pizza from us? No. And this is an outcome of disruptive innovation. Give me a second. I'm just going to fiddle. So, the humble pizza box keep on surprising us. Now, so a little bit of theory here, but I wouldn't stay kind of too long on this. At the essence of all this company has created a purple cow. Anyone here is a fan of Seth Godin, the Uber marketer? Right, so he wrote a book called The Purple Cow, and it talks about that challenge that companies in the 21st century to succeed, they have no option but to create remarkable products that the right customers, seek out. Now that is an awesome statement. Because in the old world, companies either put out great products and then they would just hope that the right customers then would just come and seek them out. Or they would just like put any product out there, measure the performance of the product for 12 and 24 months, and then kill them. But in the disruptive world, that sort of approach doesn't work anymore because there are just so many risks associated with a product launch that fails because it eventually damages the brand. So you need to create those little opportunities that allow you to bring relevant market to a relevant segment, but somehow having the two kind of zooming in on each other. And that's very difficult to do. Because again, I came back to the notion, right? No amount of strategy can get you to that point because no strategy would get you ahead of the market. Customer can't tell you that, so where do we find information from? And so we're going to keep coming back to this keyword. The keyword here is experimentation. And experimentation requires creativity, requires energy, and requires a different way of looking. So I'll be getting to that in a minute. So I want to bring up something that's kind of more naturally connected with emerging technologies, which is this drone. So if you follow the drone scene all over the world now, there are experiments, and they'll be like 3D printing. You can tell, with the VC money going into this space, the way that pretty much all the logistics and some postal organizations experimenting with them, eventually somebody's going to crack it. You can see a lot of experimentation going on. So at Australia Post, this is something that we managed to get up last week. No sound. So I'm just going to unplug this for a second so at least you can hear something. This is not CGI, by the way. It's a live drone to capture the film. I didn't pick the sound out. So the countdown actually continued, and that same physical drone later on that evening flew into a venue centre in Sydney. I believe it's on Cockle Wharf, and deliver a package of prizes for our EGM or parcel services for that to pick up and give out the contestants. So you can say, obviously this is not a real commercial applications here, but these experiments are getting us to a point where we understand the risk involved, we understand the financial, the economics behind these technologies. They'll get us to a point where we have a commercial offer around these things. Definitely, are we going to get there? Nobody can tell. Right? The whole point is to minimize your investment, invest incrementally, so that you can keep de-risking and keep getting more informed. And that is very much how disruptive innovation works. So many of you, when I had a pleasure of having a personal chat before, asked me about the connection between what we need to do, enterprises, government, in this sort of disruptive innovation sense, to how we're working today. And my answer is it's everything. Because the corporates, in the traditional sense, they're not used to experiment, unless you're an R&D shop, but they are in a minority. So that this notion of, so guys, we're actually not exactly clear where the target is. We kind of 60-70% clear, but let's get going anyway. It's pretty much alien to large corporations, to governments worldwide. And we acknowledged that a couple of years ago, and our executive team has been quite very proactive in reviewing the culture in the workforce and evolve the way that we work internally. So it's been an ongoing journey. So we start sharing some views with you. So this is something that we put up last year around the 6 pillars of the new ways of working. And they all start from the acceptance and the acknowledgement and the respect that every day, everyone, everywhere has some ideas about making our customers' lives better, about helping Australian Post to solve more challenging social problems, or to create more awesome products like parcel lockers on the market. And we need to find, literally, there are thousands of ideas I see every month. If there's a way that we could capture this, harness this, empower people to realize these ideas, that in itself is explosive. So most companies in the world today are not set up to even tap onto that well. So that is what we call the creative core that we need to build, we need to nurture, we need to encourage. Now the first pillar is what we call customer obsession. So customer centricity is not good enough, because that talks about the fact that we are following the customers, we're listening to what the customer tells us, but we might not be able to think beyond or project beyond what the customers are telling us. So being obsessed about customers. The second pillar is called disruptive invention. The term might be a bit vague, so I wait until the more detailed slide. I'll be talking about it. The third pillar is called frictionless experiences across digital and physical channels. Fourth, realizing the creative potential of our people. So you can see the people keep coming up when we talk about change. And people could be customers, could be the social partners that we work with, or our own workforce. The fifth, everything transparent. So transparency. So Australia Post is committed to this journey. There's a lot of interesting changes that are happening within the company now to promote transparency. And number 6, adaptive and lean execution. So any guys who are in IT engineering here, we have been investing in Agile, in things like capacity-funded investment, long-running teams for a good part of 3 years now. So it's a very mature operation within the company. I'll be talking in more details a bit later on. Now, it's not a surprise, it's not an accident at all that these actually very much are the same capabilities of any leading internet age business today. If you go and look at Amazon or Google, these are very much, they probably could call them different things, but the principles of the ways of working very much look the same. So what do we mean by customer obsession? So this is the actual journey that we've been going through. So there literally a lot of things to put up, but I just chose to represent the essence of what we're trying to do. So the first is the acknowledgement and the effort in trying to recognize the changing faces of our customers. So Australia as a sole society has been shifting. So naturally our customer segment has been changing, their needs have been evolving. So that means that we need to be very close to how their needs are shifting, so that then we could build these purple cows that suit their needs. And that's a huge piece of work. It's been a multi-year journey. So now, if you talk about that discipline called customer experience, everyone at Post knows about this. So across sales, product support, technology, marketing, they all know the concept. They know the basic principles of what does it mean to be CX and what are the consequences if you don't adopt CX approaches. So with every single of our initiative, we define upfront the persona of the customers, the journey maps that they go through, and the important jobs they need to fulfill when they use our products. So that allows us to build a much more holistic design around the product sets. Now, in government brand, you could replace customer with citizens. And I love the fact that everyone, Minister Turnbull, in the DTO, you guys, you're all talking about the notion of being user-centric. And that's a 100% match with the journey that we have been traveling through. Now, the second thing that we've been doing, and this is very much a cultural change device, because that is still talking. That is still process. It doesn't quite feel real, isn't it? Because nothing feels like having the customer in the room. You can see the dynamics changing very quickly. So the first thing that we did by inviting the customer to be in the middle of everything we do is that we challenge the notion in corporates that if you are in technology, then the customer from technology are the business units, not the actual customers. I'm not sure how many of you have worked for corporates, but that's how corporates, and most of them still operate like that today. So the customer of technology or engineering used to be the business unit within the business themselves, not the actual customers. So when our EGM and CIO, Andrew Water, came to his role, he said, no, let's get rid of that. The customer here is the actual customer, the guys who are buying product and services from Australia Post. So that changed the engagement, because then we will be asking questions that are in the best interest of customers. Not that the business unit don't have the right intent, just because it indirectly implied. And we have seen a massive cultural shift, even with that little change. The second thing that we did, obviously, is that in workshops, in events, in the way we design products, the customer, if there's no real customer there, they always have a spot. They always have some sort of device that represent themselves. And that brings focus. And I do get a sense now that in many parts of our business, our workforce is really empowered to represent the customer interest and solve problems on behalf of customers. Obviously, there's still a lot of maturity to go through, but I'm very excited about this journey of change at Aussie Post. Now, by the way, I've been doing a lot of talking. If you feel like you want to have kind of a short question as I go through the slide, feel free. Otherwise, I keep chatting on. The second pillar that I want to talk about here is the people, our workforce. And this is very important because at the end of the day, when you talk about the mechanism to respond to disruptive innovation is creativity, experimentation. Where do all of these things come from? It comes from our own people. And so for 21st century business or any type of organization, the people that we have and the partners that we work with, the customer that we serve, they are very much our only competitive advantage left. It's not cost anymore. It's not thought leadership. It's not any form of skill. It's those things, and they all converge on people. So the agenda, we invest on our people, on our own people, look after their interests, make sure they can grow with the company as the company grows, has been at the forefront of Australia Post for quite some time. So similar to the attempt to understand the customers, we also try to understand our workforce better. Understand the job that they're trying to fulfill on a daily basis. Now, again, with the techies in the room, it's connected with something as simple as BYOD, right? Bring your device. Hasn't quite happened yet with us, but eventually it will. Just so that in our workforce, our people are not limited by the way the corporates operate. They have more freedom in how they work, where they work, as long as we're all converging on a single arc. So these pictures here represent the persona that we have, different people in our workforce, and we're structuring our services and the way we support our workforce through these personas. We also recently refreshed our internal purpose. And again, as a company, keep going through challenges, and at the same time trying to grow at the same time. And the purpose needs to evolve with that. So I'm not going to go into details here, but I'm happy to distribute the slides after this. If you read the fine print a bit later on, it's all about people making connections. It's all the soft stuff that really matter. But it's not so much about process. And culturally, this is something that's quite deliberate, because what we're saying now internally is, well, there's no point in trying to employ very smart people if you're always trying to tell them what to do. In a way, you could empower them. Let them do their own thing, get them out of the way. I mean, 21st century leadership is about getting out of people's way, but managing risk properly, managing vision properly. And that's what we try to do with this. So we try to set the targets, inspire people, get people to believe in where we need to go, but we get out of people's way. The how of how to get there, we leave it in our people to achieve. So again, I mean, this is easier said than done. And for me, this is probably one of the biggest or most challenging change in a large corporation. But we're on the journey. The third pillar here is, this is relevant to a business like Australia Post or Telstra or any business that is kind of large, complex, but kind of fragmented, is that we have many channels. We work with all customer segments, like consumers, small business, large enterprise, government at all levels. So with many channels, with many product offers, with many kind of companies that have been integrated over time into our business, we have a lot of inconsistent experiences. And that is a problem, because if you remember earlier my point about the damages every time a brand launches a failed product on the market, because eventually it erodes the brand. You can make that mistake several times, so eventually you could have a hit. And the brand in the 21st century, in my view, has got to be very consistent, because otherwise it sends different messages. I use Apple, not a hardcore fan, but I use most of my devices are Apple. Apple has done something wonderful, which is they've gone against the trend when it comes to choices. Now, most companies today are still talking about choices for customers, as in giving them more choices. I know that even in government circle, we talk about this as well. But when's the last time you went to a website and you saw this form? It's got about 6 fields, and this field has got like 20 different options. And then every time you click on something, it's like another thing dynamically get popped up. It's like, guys, I want to pick up my kids. I just can't do this. And that is a problem with our choices. And being a technologist, I've made this mistake many times in my life. Because giving customer more choices is not necessarily good things. Usually it works in the opposite direction. So what Apple has done is they stopped giving consumer choices. But they've got to get it right. Because if that 1 or 2 choices we put in the market tank, that's it, right? But that requires a lot of expertise, that requires a very deep knowledge of the market, it requires vision. That's why people like Steve Jobs was quite successful over there. Now, we have pretty much all the companies that I know now have adopted NPS, the Net Promoter Score, and Australia Post is in the same category. So we measure NPS religiously. And we have a dedicated team doing that. At a very fine level of details as well. So this is just a snapshot of how we measure awareness of customers for our emerging product lines. And you can see something that's quite pleasing is that across the major product categories, the awareness on the market has been increasing all the time. But this is natural, because unless you've done something fundamentally flawed with new products that are interesting to customers, that are relevant to customers, usually the awareness goes up for some time before it kind of stops. The trick is how to keep going, how to break that 70% barrier. So, and we have hundreds and hundreds of pages like this, but then get fed back into how we engineer our products, on how we market, and how we partner with other companies on the market. The next pillar here is about the transparency aspect of the culture that we're trying to change. So recently we introduced Yammer. So if you listen to the story Telstra went through with Yammer, highly successful. As far as I know, Tony, the CEO, participated almost daily on Yammer, and that was great. And I'm seeing the same thing here at Australia Post. There's a huge uptake. I was talking to Peter earlier. Obviously, you guys have got something similar in this space, and the number of connections that we managed to make within the company. Because the issue here is fragmentation within the business, and teams, having to rely on emails and meetings just to transmit the image. Yammer helped us break down a lot of those protocols. At the same time, we've had our executives participating quite regularly on the forum, and that means that it encourages opinions. And the turnaround time around question and response is usually quite quick. So there's a real kind of explosion of content and energy now on this forum. But that's not the only one. I mean, we are experimenting with a few other things as well, like even something as simple as like acknowledging that in a business like Aussie, but we still have a hierarchy. And hierarchies are required because with a large company, you need structure to be able to align properly, but hierarchies do slow things down. So some of our EGMs have taken the initiative to set up direct email boxes. So Bob set up his own inbox there, and apparently it was flooded within a day. Just so many ideas came directly to him. And Bob is very good at responding very quickly, so that's great. Builds momentum. And Andrew here, Andrew Kodak, has got a Yammer thing. It's like, stay calm, just ask me a question. I respond, kind of thing. And that's really worked. I really like it. Now, the next one I want to talk about here is again more on the process side of things. And this is the science of how you churn out new products and services. You cannot tackle culture without improving the science in the engine room. So for 2.5 years now, we've been adopting the Scale Agile frameworks, really just a flavor of Agile that works across the business. So Agile at Post is not restricted to IT or engineering. It works in how we invest, in how we measure the investment, and how we do incremental improvements on our products as well. So it's very much we have a number of major initiatives, strategic ones, that are now not being invested in via the business case vehicle. They have capacity funded investment, very much a year long, 2 years long, and they have long-running teams dedicated to that portfolio. So again, that is a huge experimentation. We're starting to see some gains out of this. Now, one of the gains that you might have seen in the market recently was just the speed that we managed to inject into how we put some products in the market. So the cost of each iteration now has gone down by 30%, only within like 18 months, right? And that's huge for a business of that scale at Australia Post. When Apple Watch, the iWatch hit the market, we got very much one of the first apps in Australia into the App Store within a couple of days. I believe we were the first. We do a lot of hack days these days. And if you talk to Andrew Kodak, and I recently heard him talk about, answer this question at a Fujitsu event lately, and they asked him, so as a CIO, what would be the one thing that you would do to change the organization? And he said, more hack days. And that tells the story. So hacking here is not just engineering hacking. It's hacking growth, hacking management, hacking traditional ways of thinking. So we've had a lot of hack days, more in the IT sort of terms so far. We're trying to do a lot more hack days jointly with our customer. That's a concept that I've mentioned to you and Peter previously. And in one of those hack days, one of our graduate developers managed to build a mobile app. It's again much later, within 24 hours. Again, I mean, look, that in itself is probably not a big deal, but it does give us hope, that we actually slowly overtaking some of our competitors in the market in this regard. Now, the circle here has been a major investment in our IT shop initially, because when I first came into Post, first started working with Post 2.5 years ago, we had one way of dealing with projects, like most other organizations. So just business case, waterfall, that's it, so one speed. But if you think about that world of disruptive innovation, there are certain business changes or IT changes that we are very sure about. They need to be waterfall. They need to be clearly defined, thousands of lines of requirements, all atomic level, million lines of code. The sort of SAP changes, right? That world is not going to change. At the same time, what about some of the initiatives that are a bit more experimental? That might give us an edge over a competitor. But we're kind of not sure where we're going to land. But we need to run faster because the window of opportunity is right there. And if you miss that, you miss the boat. So that's, so the first one there was sequential. Then the second here that we introduced allows us to run a bit faster. It's called unified. Now, what about the really, really cool stuff that kind of really make no sense to business? But only a little investment, $50,000, $100,000, things like this. Lots of risk, right? You've got to manage them all. But we simply cannot wait for 3 months for a project to be mobilized, whatever it is, we need to run a couple of weeks, even a couple of days. And that's when we have the Uber gear. It's more iterative like anything else, but it's a very fast gear that allows us just to click onto the right people at the right speed, kind of different funding model, just to get something out there. So that has been really helpful with how we get experiments and products in the market. Now, the last one that I want to talk about here is, and the reason there are no pictures is that, again, even though that we are doing a lot of this is a big category, and this is emerging still. So the notion of empowering people to create and explore ideas. Now, if you walk into Australia Post headquarters today, and if you were there last year, you get a completely different vibe. A couple of things visually, and I actually noticed you've got a wall outside of your office there on here with the phrases. Right? So we use a lot of visual cue just to prompt people to think differently. We use Kanban walls a lot. And we are stocking up with books that people need to read, and they're usually on the topic of entrepreneurship, innovation. And we're challenging, we are on an event almost daily, weekly basis to challenge people to think differently. And eventually sparking that energy of creation in the workforce, and then so that they can then take ownership of their own ideas and have a path of making these ideas come true for the customers and for our business. Number two, I mentioned before, we cannot do enough hack days. And so far we've done a lot of hack days in the IT sense. We need to do a lot more hack days. Hacking our business models, hacking management. The notion of getting for example, university student to come in and challenge our business model. I think that's very exciting. There's just so much in the market in terms of potential, the ideas that we haven't been able to tap upon. We want to build on that. And the third one here is, you can tell I get excited about it, entrepreneurship. So if you look at on the market today, you have met some of the incubators. So any corporates that are serious about the future of business, and all of them should be, are setting up incubators, accelerators, to inject that speed into their business, because they all realize that the traditional way of doing business is good for BAU, but it doesn't help protect or defend the company from disruption. So the notion of doing startups, or another term for that is start-ins within the corporation, is getting very popular. Now, we also have found that through a lot of hiring, so very much we hire thousands of people, is that many of the right fit for our business, they are entrepreneurs in their own right. And they wouldn't come and work for wages or to be told what to do. They come because they want to build a business within a bigger business. And we need to set up the right culture and environment for that to happen. And that, I'm sure, will give us a huge edge over competitors. So those represent the 6 pillars of the new way of working that have been outlined. We are 2 years into, a bit more than 2 years into the process. Now, you can sense the way that I talk about it, it just all sounds like a big experiment, right? So if you're going to put the devil's advocate's hat, how do you know you're on the right track? How do you know? I'm going to throw it out there. How do you know?
People take it up.
Probably goes back to your first slide. If you're heading in the right direction and you're constantly iterating, inventing, reinventing yourself, then, and you're gaining market share and you've got metrics, then you can probably tell if you're on the right track.
Thank you very much. Anyone remember that Minions picture at the start? Because, and again to what Ed Lincoln said, because none of us can predict the future here. We're all trying to create it. But the future becomes more real if we listen to the market and if we keep measuring ourselves. But you don't know what to measure, and for us, again, come back to customers. Because at the end of the day, we are an enterprise that first provide a service back to the community. And secondly, it's a commercial enterprise selling products on the market. And you've got to listen, you've got to tune in very closely to these two segments of the audience. And if they tell us that we're on the right track, then chances we are. So if you look at parcel lockers, anyone here who's familiar with the NPS score and how it's structured, I believe that recently it got a plus 70 rating in the market. I don't know of a second product on the market that's got plus 70. I mean, even the best performing products on the market are like plus 50 or something. So, but that's one product. Now, what we need to do is to make sure that a range of our products consistently hit that mark, and that will be world's first. The second thing is obviously here, we keep measuring ourselves, and the arrows here represent the relative increase in customer advocacy behind Australia Post as a brand. So, from my point of view, again, the hypothesis is that if we keep measuring ourselves against this, at the same time keep evolving our internal culture, so you get to that sort of explosive state of, I dream of a day where every week we put out 2 or 3 new products in the market. I think that they will happen. And that will not happen through hierarchy and structure. That will still exist, but that will happen through creativity and energy and empowerment. That's it that I have today. I do have my contact information, which is my email. So if you've got any questions later on, feel free to reach out to me.